Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 3 of the anime series Norn9. And there is definitely a perplexing game currently afoot in this series. Just very strange and odd character dynamics and interactions and personalities, and a large, majority of the crux of this episode was calling back on the pasts of some of these characters, especially characters who are basically partnered up. You have Nanami and Akito, Mikoto and Sakuya. To a point, Kakeru, he reveals his past to Koharu. And this new cat who just showed up out of nowhere in the last episode, Sarada, who, for all intents and purposes, was apparently taken from, present-day Earth, as we saw toward the end of the previous episode, as well as the sort of pre-credits sequence at the start of this one. He's in a museum, and we see that he's intellectual, he can hold his own, he's looking at books on aerodynamics, because he understands in order to piece together where I am and how to get back to where I'm going, I have to understand where I am first, and make sense of that, and how he's comparing and contrasting the lack of aerodynamic capability in Norn as a vessel, which he now inhabits. So it's quite interesting that. And he seems to be like the youngest one among them, and yet he's the one who has made the most leaps and bounds intellectually thus far. And that's something, there's something of an almost arrested development in these characters. Like, I know they're all supposed to be relatively young, but a lot of their character interactions, there's a lack of maturity. And a lot of what we're seeing about their pasts sort of calls back on that, sort of falls back on the idea of they came together, they were introduced, or they made a promise to each other, whatever it is, in youth, as children. So there's a large chunk of the way they're behaving, especially as playing off each other. I mean, from, pulling pranks on each other, Kakeru going into Senryu's place and threatening to cut his door down, which he apparently does, and then they're gonna, wreck the rest of the place just to get him outdoors and everything. It's strange. There is an air of strangeness about all of this. And adding steps further to that is this ghostly apparition, like something out of Dot Hack, that, Sarada sees in the library. She just appears. Nobody else seems to know about her. Is she maybe an AI consciousness, like, central core computer system to this vessel? Is she some remnant of whomever programmed the vessel to take people, pluck them out of history, people with powers and all this kind of stuff? Or other reasons? As we basically find out, Akito apparently doesn't have any powers. He is then overseen, communing with this guy. I'm assuming it's a guy wearing white, sort of looking like a less glowy version of the little girl Sarada sees. And Nanami witnesses this. It's interesting how there was a weird edit in the two confrontations they had, because at one point she's like following him. This is after they had their little picnic lunch, and Akito's getting very much up in her face because she made the rice balls all bitter and whatever. And he wants to throw it away because it's knocking one of the other guys out. He's stunned by, I guess, the harsh flavor of it or whatever. And he's really reprimanding her and getting up in her face. And he even takes it steps further in their, second and third confrontations where he's getting physical. And it's like, I'm gritting my teeth. I'm like, get your hands off. What is your problem, dude? Again, we see there was a past history there, but what is that history? We find out less about them than anyone else in the episode, and Nanami, herself, is kind of reminding me of like Rei Ayanami from Evangelion, yet even more sort of robotic and detached. But she has some kind of attachment to Akito, which leads her to, sort of follow him even though he wants to get away from her. And she starts to sort of accuse him and believe maybe he is the one who is among them, who is in cahoots with Gunman from last episode. Even, Koharu, for all of the talk about her naivete and Kakeru's having fun with her, implying maybe he's a woman and everything. And I can see people making the knee-jerk reaction, how could she even possibly, conceivably, assume that is the case. And I mean, well, first of all, take a step back and look at the world within which we live in the real world. You know, there is diversity aplenty, and that's a beautiful thing. You don't have to conform yourself to looking or being, befitting of a mold to any particular societal, equivalent. You can do and be whatever you want, at least in most parts of the world and in most estimations. But also look at the past, that Koharu came from. In her era, it wasn't a sort of anomaly to have men in full sort of kabuki drag in performance arts. And so there could be from time to time that like mystifying equivalent, like I don't know. Just by looking, you can't judge a book by its cover. And she has a very simple nature, but you have to also then understand how perceptive she is. Because she picks up on the uncomfortability of Kakeru when she's trying to wipe dirt off his ear, and he's got that cuff, and he slaps her hand away. His demeanor changes, and she is perceptive of this. So she's not naive to the point of, being stupid. She's just the product of the sort of simple times she was taken out of. And this whole new world, I mean, around every corner, there are new surprises and things to interpret for herself and understand that she never had encountered before. So you could look at someone like Kakeru in her position and not be sure what to make of him as a person. And I like that there is some banter between them. It's kind of like not an unrequited love, but like a just burgeoning, you have some characters pointing fun and poking fun at the idea of like shipping them and everything, they are partnered up, but there is no, at least in her estimation, she hasn't really, again, touching upon that Arrested Development aesthetic, she hasn't confronted any sort of feelings of being attracted to him. She may not even be experiencing anything of that sort. That might be something that grows along the course of her evolution in this story. As she, embraces a level of maturity, as she grows up, for lack of a better term. I love that she is so consumed with the root or the seed of the peach tree, the only remnant of said peach tree, which is now growing, and she feels closer in connectivity to, Kakeru, and that's the growth of their relationship that it's somewhat heartwarming. It doesn't automatically have to be romantic or sexual or all these other more adult themes. I like that there is a simplicity to it. And that simplicity is translating to the overall enigma that is Norn, that is this situation, trying to understand it from the perspective, for lack of a better term, of a young adult or a child. Why are they taken so young? Why was Sorara taken? Why was no one sent out to take him or find him? There must be something special about him, and for him to be the only one seeing this ghostly apparition girl, maybe she is the core of the computer systems or something, and she needs to find someone with a level of intellect that can actually, make some change to whatever's going on. Maybe this is something that should have died. These systems of picking people out of history should have died long ago. And she's desperate as an AI, that can't shut itself down. She's desperate to find a way to shut it down. I don't know. It's just highly intriguing. And of course, again, the idea that not everybody, we don't know for sure who has powers and who doesn't, apart from whom we've seen. And we find Akito apparently has none, and he's trying to keep that hidden. Whereas Nanami is trying to keep her ability hidden. Does she have an ability? She seemed very much like she did not want to share whatever ability she might have. But is that an extension of her trying to be protective of Akito's lack of ability? It's quite intriguing, like the whole thing. I don't exactly know. And with Mikoto and Sakuya, knowing that there was a promise of love, a confession of love in their youths, and then to see she's the only one who saw the gunman up close, so she's trying to draw it with the artistic skills of Faye Valentine in the Cowboy Bebop movie, I might add. Just horrid. The little sketch she makes. Sorara is like, is that a bug? you know. And then you got Sakuya just playing around saying, oh, it's an artistic masterpiece. I like that dynamic, but I am wondering what is up with Mikoto. Why is she detaching herself from him? He seems to want to be close with her, and he likes having this genial sort of friendship relationship. Is it because she takes it more seriously, that promise they made in youth? Or was there some infidelity that she has perceived where he let go of that promise? I don't know. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's just a fact of her being jealous of the other girls in the environment. Like, don't go looking at those girls. Remember our promise. I think she said that in a previous episode. Remember the promise between us. So at least at this juncture, I'm somewhat mystified by what the hell is going on, but I'm highly intrigued. Because of the interesting characterization, I'm invested. I want to figure it out. And then, of course, not to be outdone by this, apparently this cliffhanger thing is going to be a recurring thing every single episode. We had that second confrontation after Nanami sees Akito talking to this mysterious benefactor, and because of a gust of wind, she almost falls to her doom, and he goes to grasp her hand. And we do see, for all of his getting manhandly on her and you know, being sort of demeaning to her and forceful with her, he is willing to risk his life to save hers. So again, what's going on with the relationships of these characters? What's going on with why they're here? I hope we're gonna make some headway to figure this out. I'm, at least for the moment, excited to piece it together. I just feel like there's more questions lingering by the end of this episode than there has been in previous ones. Mostly it was like satisfying episodes, and then you had the cliffhanger, which was like, ooh, let's see what happens next week. This whole episode was a bit less satisfying, a lot more questions that I really want to find out more about what's going on. And then the cliffhanger was kind of like second to that. You know, like, let's figure out this world and these characters and why this is all happening. What is happening exactly? And the cliffhanger is just kind of like, I'm expecting someone to come running up and saving them. Someone maybe unlikely. Maybe Senri will, you know, be the one who runs out and does this. Maybe it'll be Kakaru or whatever. Maybe he'll create a vine, you know, sort of hammock that they fall into rather than falling to their deaths, respectively. It's just a really intriguing series. And this episode put the mystery and the enigmatic aspects over the top more than the previous two did for me. So I can't wait to find out. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 3 of Norn9, if you've seen it. If it left you as perplexed, maybe even put off by the characterization. I mean, unless you're really sort of empathetic to where these characters, where we know of the characters, who, you know, the backgrounds we know of them. If you put yourself into their shoes and you really kind of see it from their perspective, I think you're more attracted to it. You might not be as put off by it, but I can definitely see people just sort of watching this series off the cuff, or not to be as invested, and just maybe being too mind-boggled and perplexed and just being like, forget it, I'm not watching this crap anymore. So as I was saying, anything goes in the comments below, whether you loved it or hated it. Our POVs can certainly disagree. Just love having that conversation. And I'd be highly interested to hear what anyone's take on this is. Speculative wise. No spoilers based on the source material, please. You know, but just love having that conversation. Would love to try to fit together a working hypothesis of what in the hell is going on. And if you think there's any validity to the idea that there is a stage of arrested development where these characters are maybe acting not wholly immature, but less mature in the approach of the form and function of whatever is going on, then maybe they ought to be. That kind of thing. Let me know your thoughts. So, yeah, otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well. And I'll catch you all later. Peace.